They say the Colosseum was built for glory, but if you listen closely, the stones whisper another truth. A truth buried under centuries of dust and dried blood. A truth Rome never wanted you to hear. Because what happened inside that arena wasn't just entertainment. It was a carefully crafted illusion, a storm of screams and steel designed to shape an empire's power. And behind every roar of the crowd, someone's life was being traded away. Tonight we walk into the heart of that forgotten world, into the shadows beneath the sand, where the real history of the Colosseum has been waiting, silent and unbeaten by time. There are places in this world where time refuses to move on, where the past lingers like a breath on the back of your neck. The Colosseum is one of those places. Stand in its shadow long enough, and you can almost feel the rumble of a million voices rising from the dust. Voices of emperors hungry for applause, voices of men who stepped into the sand knowing they would not walk out, and voices of a crowd so vast, so wild it could shake the very bones of Rome. But this story, what truly happened inside these walls, does not begin with the battles, nor the beasts, nor the glory. It begins with a truth that Rome was careful to hide behind marble and spectacle. A truth carved into the cracks of every ancient stone, that nothing inside the Colosseum was ever as innocent as entertainment. Because when the gates opened and the empire poured inside, they were not simply coming to watch. They were being taught. Rome understood something the world still struggles to grasp, that the greatest weapon is not the sword, but the mind of the masses. And the Colosseum was its classroom. Picture the scene, early morning before the sun has climbed over the arches. Vendors rush through the corridors, preparing for a day soaked in roars and blood. Citizens line up in endless waves, from senators draped in purple to the poor who slept in the streets the night before. All of them equal now, bound together by hunger for spectacle. They believed they were coming for entertainment, but in truth, they were stepping into a lesson carefully crafted by the men who ruled them. The emperors knew that in a world trembling with rebellions, threats, and whispers of unrest, the people needed something to believe in, something to distract them from empty plates, unfair taxes, and broken promises. So they gave them the Colosseum, a place where thunder lived, where Rome could prove its strength with every drop of blood spilled on the sand, where the crowd could forget the weight of their own lives by watching someone else lose theirs. Look deeper, and you'll see that every shout, every clash, every spectacle served a purpose. The games were not chaos. They were choreography, political theater at its most ruthless. When an emperor stepped into the arena, the crowd did not see a ruler desperate for approval. They saw a godlike figure, a protector who fed them, entertained them, and controlled the storm unfolding before their eyes. With a single gesture of his hand, he could spare a life or end one. And through that power, Rome reminded its people who stood above them and who knelt below. Even the brutality itself was calculated. Gladiators were trained to die well, dramatically, decisively, because a good death inspired loyalty. A good death kept the crowd enthralled. A good death kept Rome stable, and the citizens, swept away by excitement, never questioned the truth. They didn't see the politics behind the show. They didn't see the fear in the emperor's heart. They didn't see that the Colosseum was not built to entertain them, but to control them. Yet the stones remembered. They remember the chants that drowned out hunger. They remember the cheers that silenced corruption. They remember how Rome used spectacle to mold the minds of millions. Inside this arena, every scream had a purpose. Every roar hid a message. Every spectacle shaped an empire. And that is the part of the Colosseum's history the world was never meant to hear. Walk farther into the Colosseum's memory, and the echoes begin to change. The roar of the crowd fades, and something far quieter rises from beneath it. Not the sound of triumph, not the sound of glory, but the heartbeat of the people whose lives were swallowed by this place. Because the Colosseum was not built by heroes. It was built by hands that trembled, hands that bled, hands that belonged to men who would never sit in its marble seats. Their stories are the shadows that linger longest. Before the first spectator entered, thousands of slaves dragged stone upon stone, shaping an arena they themselves were forbidden to enjoy. Some died before the first arch was even completed, buried under the weight of Rome's ambition. And yet the world remembers the emperors, not the nameless ones who carved their dreams into the earth. But the truest stories, the ones that matter, belong to those who walked into the sand. Imagine the dawnlight cutting through the iron bars of the holding cells, the air thick with dust, the distant rumble of a hungry crowd leaking in from above. In those cramped chambers beneath the arena, men from every corner of the empire waited for their fate. Some were criminals, condemned by the law. Some were prisoners of war, torn from their homes by Roman legions. But many had done nothing wrong at all. They were slaves traded like cattle, or debtors unable to pay what they owed, forced into combat to satisfy a city's appetite for violence. Few volunteered, even fewer had a choice. Picture one of them, a young man from a faraway province, captured in a raid he never saw coming. He once worked the fields with his father. He once dreamed of a quiet life. But now he stands in darkness, listening as the arena above trembles like thunder. He can feel the sand beneath his feet, still cold from the night. He knows that by midday it will be soaked with blood, perhaps his. This is the truth that the crowd above never understood. When they shouted for battle, they weren't cheering for warriors. They were cheering for men who would never see their families again. Men who were handed a wooden sword not to win honor, but to survive a few moments longer. And yet, these fighters moved with courage that defied their fate. Some became legends not because they sought fame, but because they refused to die quietly. Their names echoed through the corridors, whispered by slaves, feared by beasts, respected even by veterans of war. But for every legend carved into history, thousands more vanished without a trace. Their bones fed the earth, their stories drifted away like ash, and the Colosseum did not care. Even the animal keepers, the men responsible for releasing lions, tigers, and bears into the arena, lived lives on the edge of death. A misstep in the tunnels could cost them a limb, or worse. Their world was a labyrinth of cages, chains, and creatures wrenched from forests across 3 continents. A menagerie assembled not for study, but for slaughter. Every person below the arena lived in fear. Every one of them carried scars, some seen, many hidden. But none of them ever touched the marble seats above. None of them ever tasted the cool shade of the imperial box. Because inside the Colosseum, the value of a life depended on where you stood, in the shadows or in the light. And yet, even in this darkness, something human survived. A spark of hope, a desperate will to keep breathing. Some fighters rose from slaves to champions. Some earned freedom with skill and luck. Some lived long enough to hear the crowd not as a threat, but as thunder at their back. But most did not. Their stories are the bones of this arena. Their memories are the ghosts that walk these corridors. And without them, the Colosseum is just stone. If you step deeper into the Colosseum, past the shattered seats, past the broken archways, you will eventually find yourself standing at the edge of a world few ever saw. A world hidden beneath the sand. A world Rome kept buried for centuries. Down there, the air grows cold. The sunlight fades into a trembling glow, and the silence feels heavy, as if the earth itself is remembering. This was the true heart of the Colosseum, not the grand arena above, but the labyrinth below. Dark corridors stretched in every direction, carved like veins beneath a tight. The walls were lined with iron rings, shackles, pulleys, and heavy wooden gates. It smelled of sweat and straw and fear. This was where the machinery of Rome's cruelty lived. The crowds above never saw it, but every spectacle they cheered for was born in this labyrinth. Every beast that lunged from the shadows, every platform that rose from below, every trap that snapped open on command. It all began with the work of hundreds of men hidden beneath the arena floor. Here, slaves moved like ghosts, their bodies bent from years of labor. Beast keepers whispered to one another in the dark, carrying torches that flickered against the bars of cages. You could hear lions pacing, claws scraping against stone. Bears grunted in their dens, driven mad by captivity. Wolves snarled in the corners, waiting for a door to open, not knowing it would lead them to death. This underground world was a storm waiting to be unleashed. Massive elevators, powered by teams of men pulling ropes until their hands bled, would lift cages toward the arena floor. With a single signal from above, the gates would snap open, unleashing chaos into the sunlight. To the spectators, it looked like magic. A lion appearing out of nowhere, a gladiator rising from the depths, a stage transforming in minutes, but it wasn't magic. It was engineering fueled by sweat, screams, and the desperation of those trapped below, and the emperors. They understood the power of this hidden spectacle. They mastered it, perfected it. used it to shape the minds of a city that demanded wonder and terror in equal measure. For the audience, the arena was a place of awe, but for those beneath it, it was a place where nightmares walked. Men waited in silence, listening to the chaos above, knowing they would soon rise into that storm. Some prayed, some cried, some cursed the gods. Some simply stared into the darkness, accepting their fate. When the wooden platforms creaked and began to rise, a man could feel the world shifting beneath him. He could hear the crowd swell like a tidal wave. He could taste the dust as the gate opened. And by the time sunlight hit his eyes, there was no turning back. Even the animals, frightened by the sudden burst of light, charged forward because instinct told them to run. And in their panic, Rome found entertainment. This was Rome's greatest illusion, a perfect machine of death hidden beneath marble and glory. A place where human and beast met their end so others could forget their troubles, if only for an afternoon. But the walls down here remember something different. The cries of men dragged to the elevators, the roar of lions pushed toward the gates, the whispers of workers praying the ropes wouldn't snap, the trembling footsteps of those who knew their lives were measured in moments. Above, the arena was a world of spectacle. Below, it was a world of truth. A truth Rome never wanted its citizens to witness, that behind every moment of entertainment was an engine built from suffering. And long after the empire fell, long after the crowds vanished, long after the sand turned cold, this hidden world remained silent. A reminder that the Colosseum was not just a monument to Roman greatness, but a monument to the human cost that made it possible. Down here in the shadows beneath the arena, the Colosseum speaks, and its voice is one the world must never forget.